قال لهم موسى ويلكم لا تفتروا على الله كذبا فيسحتكم بعذاب وقد خاب من افترى فتنازعوا أمرهم بينهم وأسروا النجوى قالوا هذان لساحران يريدان أن يخرجاكم من أرضكم بسحرهما ويذهبا بطريقتكم المثلى فأجمعوا كيدكم ثم أتوا صفا وقد أفلح اليوم من استعلى قالوا يا موسى إما أن تلقي وإما أن نكون أول من ألقى قال بل ألقوا فإذا حبالهم وعصيهم يخيل إليه من سحرهم أنها تسعى. Hassan, it's ready? فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى قلنا لا تخف إنك أنت الأعلى صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah accept our efforts, our worship, our mourning, and our get together in these very holy and blessed nights of Ramadan. Inshallah, you include all of us in your prayers. Without further ado, I'd like to invite our dear Dr. Sheikh Salim Yusufali with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma sallallahu. Can I get a loud salawat from everyone all together? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajana. It's better that I keep it away, not too close. It's not true. Okay, alright. I think it was good. I just don't want it to be in your way. Oh, okay, I got it. Because I saw your hand in it. Oh, okay, I got it.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من ليلتنا هذه إلى قيام يوم الدين. Respected brothers and sisters, we gathered here on this evening to commemorate the martyrdom anniversary of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam. These are the nights where we know that his family was in a state of deep mourning as they saw their father, their Imam, on his deathbed with the poison seeping through his body. And by coming to these gatherings, it's a way of showing that we care, that we are aligned with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that we are happy when they are happy and we're sad when they are sad. And it's an opportunity for us to remind ourselves of what we stand for and what our identity is and what's important for us. It's not a coincidence that Imam Ali alayhi salam shahada takes place towards the latter portion of Ramadan. In a way, you can think of Ramadan and the fasting being a way of training us to become like Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam, if you want to look at how amazing and excellent he was, you see that he had complete control over himself, complete discipline. He knew exactly where to say what, where to put what he needed to do at every single moment. And that's what fasting in the month of Ramadan teaches us. Sometimes we might think that, well, it's so hard, it's so inconvenient. What's the point? I can do yoga or meditate or, some type of listen to relaxing music or something, and that's how I can find my solace and my peace. But we have to trust that the one who created us knows what we need, what our body needs, what our soul needs. And the blessings of this fasting, the blessings of this obligation are so many. Sometimes we don't realize until many years later that it was in the month of Ramadan that I learned something about what it truly means to be a servant of God. So tonight I'd like to, in the speech, I'd like to continue from where we left off last night. For those of you who weren't present, I want to quickly summarize the discussion and then continue from there. So we have this very puzzling and difficult situation to understand, that we have this pure being, Imam Ali alayhi salam, the source of knowledge and wisdom and guidance, and yet he is somebody who is turned against by his own people. People who used to be with him, people who would hear his sermons, people who would see his piety, they're the ones who became the traitors and turned against him. What was the reason behind the failing of the elite? Because it was the elite, those who were small in number but were in a position to guide others. It was their failing that contributed very significantly to Imam Ali's martyrdom. In particular, we were looking at two individuals, Talha and Zubair. Both of them were around the same age as Imam Ali alayhi salam. Both of them accepted Islam at a very early stage in the history of Islam. One of them was the fourth or fifth person. One of them was the seventh or eighth person to accept Islam. Imam Ali being the second person. Both of them participated in the battles. Both of them were strong and brave enough to migrate, leave aside everything in Makkah and go to Medina. Both of them sacrificed enormously for the sake of the Prophet. Both of them were ready to give Imam Ali allegiance after the death of the Prophet, and so on and so forth. If you look at their excellences, their awards, if you wanted to give them a Hall of Fame type of qualifications, they had everything going for themselves. But as they became older and they spent more time in this world, there was a sickness that entered into their hearts. There was a corruption that took place. Tonight I want to look at two incidents and compare the response of Talha and Zubair on one hand and the response of Imam Ali alayhi salam on the other hand. And by comparing and contrasting, we can start to see what is the root cause of this, where is this coming from. So in history, and again, when we talk about history, the point is to see what we can take for our current times. As Imam Ali says that إِنَّ الْأُمُورَ أَشْبَاهٌ, different events that take place, don't think that they're just separate from one another. They resemble each other. We can take great lessons from the past. What is the scenario? The Khalifa of the time, the third Khalifa Uthman, the public has largely turned against him. Why? Because they have seen that he is corrupt. What did he do? A number of crimes. He started appointing his own family members in positions of power. He started giving them handouts from the public treasury. He started abusing and treating harshly some of the brave companions of our Prophet, like Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, and many other failings. When people would complain against him, he would play politics with them, and then, he was accused of trying to then cause those same people who came to complain about justice, he caused them to be assassinated. So these type of things were taken, very dirty, nasty politics. So the people start to turn against him. Among the people who are the most vocal critics is Talha and Zubair, these two individuals. Very, very severe and harsh criticism. And it gets to the point that people from outside of Medina come from Kufa, and people in Medina join together and they say, let's go and surround the house of Uthman and insist that he steps down from the position of the Khalifa. So it's a big kind of protest, and people are, a lot of, slogans and chanting, and people are, demanding that he resign and step down. And then the Umayyads, because Uthman was somebody who was linked with the Umayyads and he was supporting them, they hear that, Uthman is facing this type of pressure. They make a plan to rescue him from Medina. Right? He's going to bail out. When Zubair and Talha hear this, they station their own people at the outskirts of Medina to make sure that he can't escape. So now he's stuck in the city. Now, it goes further than that. As the circle of people around the house starts to tighten, it becomes a blockade, and the people inside of the house, they run out of their supplies. There's a shortage of food, there's a shortage of water. Uthman, from within the home, he starts to become desperate. So what does he do? He seeks help. He asks Talha and Zubair, he says, what is it that you can do for me? I'm here, right? I need some help. And according to the books of history, we're told that Zubair told Uthman, he says that you will not get a single drop of water. Nothing will come to you. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he is traveling at the time. He comes to Medina, he hears about what's happening. So he goes to Talha and he says to him, Talha, what do you think we should do? Right? This is not a nice situation here. Like the whole Muslim Ummah, this could lead to major consequences. What should we do? Talha tells him that, Abdullah ibn Abbas, my advice to you is let's gather some firewood and let's burn down the home with the inhabitants in it. He goes to Zubair and he asks him, what should we do? Zubair tells him, Ibn Abbas, my advice to you is let's get some firewood, let's light a fire, and let's burn the people within. Now, brothers and sisters, right, these are people who spend time with the person who the Quran has titled Rahmatun lil Alameen, the mercy to all of humankind. They saw the Prophet's akhlaq, they saw how kind he was, they saw how merciful he was. But yet, as they get in their elder years, you see this type of hardness that has entered into their hearts, where they're advocating complete and absolute cruelty. Despite whatever crimes he had committed, they had no mercy in their hearts for him. That was their response. Now let's compare that to the response of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Did Imam Ali alayhi salam have something against Uthman? Did he have reason to take a position against him? For sure. Right? So many reasons. Imam Ali alayhi salam was the champion of justice. The people who had complaints about Uthman, a lot of times they would take their complaints to the door of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And sometimes Imam Ali would be the one who would mediate. He would say, for the sake of the ummah, let me try to find a solution for you. Imam Ali was well aware of the harsh treatment and injustice of Uthman. But when Ibn Abbas comes to Imam Ali after he goes to Zubair and Talha and he says, what do you think we should do? Imam Ali tells him, says, number one, give him a chance to repent. And don't be hasty. Give the man a chance. Maybe with this pressure, when he sees that it got to this situation, maybe things will change. And then he says that if they don't change, then find another way. This is not the way we do things. We don't burn somebody alive. We don't cause them to be starved to death in their home. This is not our way. This is not the way of the Prophet. This is not the way of Islam. And Uthman, from within the home, when he's desperate, it's very interesting. He sends a message to Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says that, Ya Ibn al-Hassan, I need your help in this circumstance. He knows that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the one who was mistreated. He knows that it's his right that he has stolen. But he knows the personality of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So he knows when he reaches out that Imam Ali alayhi salam will not refuse him. And we're told that Imam Ali alayhi salam tried different ways to get Uthman water and food. Some of the reports say that he sent Imam Hassan alayhi salam to stand guard, either to defend or to at least ensure that when the food and water come, that it does not, meaning that it makes its way inside of the home. And Imam Hassan alayhi salam, according to some of the reports, he got injured in this process. So this is one incident, brothers and sisters. You can see, compare and contrast. Here you have the response of people whose hearts have been affected. They become corrupt, they become sickened, and now you see in this dire circumstance how they respond. And then you see the response of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I'm going to share a second incident. What happened is that Talha and Zubair, even though historical reports say that they played a very important role in what led to the murder of Uthman, later on they take up the rally cry of we're going to defend the blood that was spilled of Uthman. It's very interesting, right? Slogans. It's kind of like the people who champion for human rights, yet they're the first people to trample on human rights. So they take on the slogan of we're going to champion the rights of Uthman, and of course this is part of the plan, right, to seize power and because they saw the opportunity now that the Muslim Ummah was weakened. They had made the oath to Imam Ali alayhi salam, but then when Imam Ali alayhi salam, didn't give them what they wanted, he didn't give them the money and the power that they wanted. What do? They say that we're going to go for Hajj, and that was just an excuse. They leave Medina, they go towards Mecca, and then they split, they go towards Basra. And the plan now is to take over Basra and make that be the stronghold for what may be the new Khilafah. They're going to take over the Ummah. Now it's very interesting that they make their way to Basra. What happened when they got there? Basra at that time, Imam Ali was in charge. He had his own person as the governor. They kick him out. One of the first things that they do is they make their way to the public treasury. Now these are people who have plenty of property. They have farms that bring in income on a daily basis. Like, it's famous in history for how much they're making. But when they make it to the public treasury, they break the law, they go in, and it's like as if they're in a playground. And it's interesting how in history it records what they said at that point. They bring it back to God and they say that this is what God has promised us. And here they are indulging themselves in the money that they have absolutely no haqq in. They have no right to that money. And people are really concerned, right? Because they're seeing these people who, their names are, they're legends, right? They're people who, if you talk about their prowess in battle, and there's still stories about how brave and strong these people are. And here they see them, having this type of hunger for the treasury. There was a man who was living in Basra, and he's watching what's happening. He sees them come and take over the city. He sees them come and take the treasury over. And he goes to Talha and Zubair. And he says to them that, if you don't mind me asking you a couple of questions, so go ahead. He says that, you're companions of the Prophet. Is it the case that you came here because the Prophet told you that this is something that you had to do? Was it something like that you heard a hadith from the Prophet that one day you're supposed to go to Basra and just take over the city and misappropriate the wealth? Like, what's going on? And they kind of look away and they don't really know what to respond. So he says that, well, if there's no hadith, then why are you here? And finally, one of the two, he says to him, he's honest, he says that, well, we heard that there was a lot of dinars and a lot of wealth here, so we decided to come and, participate in the wealth and just sort of be partners with you in this wealth right here. Open admission to this hunger for money, this hunger for wealth. How old are these people? These people are 60 years old, plus or minus a few years. They're well into their lives. Life expectancy at that time wasn't like what it is right now. I don't know how many years they think they're going to be living, and yet at this time, this is the type of hunger they have towards their wealth. Imam Ali alayhi salam, later on, the battle of Jamal takes place near Basra. Imam alayhi salam is victorious. When he goes to that same treasury, that same place where they treated like a playground, look and see how is it that Imam Ali alayhi salam acts at that point. People were watching. One of these people was somebody named Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. If you study the history of Arabic grammar, Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali is the famous person for developing like the structure for Arabic grammar. He was a student of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So he says that I was watching, because I had seen what Talha and Zubair did when they came into Kufa. I was watching Imam alayhi salam. I watched him build the treasury, and I heard him say the following: Ya Safra wa ya Bayda ghurri ghayri. Okay, what is Safra? Meaning that which is yellow. Ya Bayda, that which is white. These coins, the gold, the silver, it's like scintillating. It's like metal. It's shining in the light. Gold and silver, go and deceive someone other than me. Al-malu ya'asub al-ghalama wa ana ya'asub al-mu'minin. Wealth is the leader of those who are unjust, and I am the leader of the believers. And with that, he completely just walked away from the treasury. He didn't have any care for it. And Abu Aswad says that when I saw this from Imam alayhi salam, then I was able to contrast clearly. I saw that this is the type of person who Imam Ali alayhi salam, and that only increased my basira, my awareness of who Imam Ali alayhi salam actually is. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, what is the difference? What is the key? What's happening here? There are some people who, when they become more and more used to the dunya, they become used to this world, they start to take on these negative traits. They say that there was once the Khalifa Harun al-Rashid. You've heard this story before. Harun al-Rashid was the Khalifa at the time of the 8th Imam alayhi salam. Harun, one time, he said to his courtiers, he says that I want to meet somebody who heard a hadith from the Prophet directly. This is like 170 years or something after the Hijrah. So this courtier is like, well, they're probably not even alive right now because it's been a long time. He says, no, go find somebody. So they search the lands and they finally find this old man. He was so old that he couldn't walk. They had to move him around in a basket. So they bring him and they say that here's somebody who says he heard a hadith from the Prophet. So Harun says that, okay, old man, tell me, what is it that you heard? You say you heard a hadith from the Prophet? He says, yeah, one time when I was a very young boy, my father took me to meet the Prophet and I saw him once, only one time. Harun says that, oh, that's nice. Tell me, what did you hear from him at that time? He said, yeah, I heard one hadith, and I heard that the Prophet said that, the gist of it is this, that whenever somebody gets older, there's two things that increase with their age. What are those two things? Number one is their greed, and the second one is them imagining that they are going to live forever. This false delusion that this is the way things are going to be here forever. So Harun was impressed, right? He said, thank you. He gives him a bag of gold and he says, okay, off with you. That's good. I got my thing, what I was looking for. So they take the basket and the man away from the court, and then suddenly they hear the old man, he's kind of making some noise. They say, what's up? And he says, okay, well, I want to go back to Harun. He said, no, it can't happen. We're done. Our time is over. He says, no, I insist. So they bring him back to Harun. He says, what's going on? The old man says that, oh Khalifa, I have a question for you. That bag of gold that you gave me right now, tell me something. Is it a one-time gift or is it a yearly thing that every year I'll be able to get that gift from you? So Harun heard that from him and he started laughing. And he says that indeed, Sadaqa Rasulullah, that the Prophet of Allah, he definitely was truthful in what he said. As somebody's age increases, their greed and their desire, they imagine they're going to live forever, it also increases as well too. Because that's what we're seeing with this old man himself. Now this is just a story, brothers and sisters, it points to a reality that human beings, the older they get, right, there's certain traits that they can develop which are very destructive. Sometimes they tell you that, oh, when you get older, that's when wisdom will come. When you get older, that's when you become mature. Right? You're so immature now, you're young. Sure, old age can bring wisdom. Yes, it can bring like a type of stability. But oftentimes old age can bring negative traits as well. There's a beautiful hadith we have from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says that I love children and I love them for 5 characteristics that they have. Right? What are those 5 things? He says that one of the things is, for example, that they play in the earth. Right? They don't need to be so fancy about things. They can get down and dirty in the earth. They can be humble that way. What else do I love children for is that sometimes they fight with each other, but then after they fight, they don't hold it in their hearts. They forgive each other right away. Why do I love children a lot? Because they cry a lot. Their hearts are soft. Right? And so on and so forth. Then he says that one of the reasons why I love children is because when they build something, they can easily destroy it and just walk away from it. I don't know if you've ever seen, at the beaches, sometimes you go, you see these children, they spend hours and hours building these elaborate sand castles with different rooms and whatnot. And then suddenly a wave will come from the ocean and just wipe the whole thing away. And I've seen this, and they just laugh, right? This is fun, right? And it's like, well, you spend hours doing it, but no, it was fun. Right? Or they spend the whole day and then they'll come back in the evening and the parents will be like, let's go home, okay, let's go home, right? They leave their entire creation of a daytime just like that. Right? What is it that they have? What do they understand that sometimes adults don't understand? There's an incredible quality, there's a term that's used for this in Arabic, which is called futuwa. Right? Futuwa is very hard to translate in English, but it's a quality which you could say is this, it's eternal youthfulness. Okay, eternal youthfulness. And what they say is somebody who is a fatah is somebody who is old in their youth and young in their old age. They're old in their youth and young in their old age. Meaning what? Meaning that somehow they manage to bring in those good characteristics even when they're young, they show those. And when they're old, they maintain their youthful characteristics as well. Right? And why am I saying this? Because tonight we're commemorating that person who, of all the characteristics, one of those things which he's famous for is being the fatah, having that futuwa. Right? Where does this come from? You all know the incident that took place. It was the Battle of Uhud, and people had abandoned the Prophet in this battle because they thought that they were going to get killed. But there was one person who was right there at the side of the Prophet, did not even move a bit away from him. And that was Imam Ali alayhi salam. And at one point Rasulullah says to him, he says, Ya Ali, you saw everyone else, they've gone, they're split, they're here, they're there, or they're even off the battlefield. Why don't you go, why are you staying here? So Imam Ali looks at the Prophet and he says to him that, Ya Rasulullah, I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to ask somebody else about your condition and ask them how you are. I want to know myself. I want to be able to see it right there. Right? I'm never going to be far. So then the Prophet, he's happy with the response of Imam Ali. He says, Ya Ali, if that's the case, then there are some mushrikeen who are gathering over there, go and fight them. Imam Ali goes and he takes care of that. He comes back, he says, Ya Ali, there's mushrikeen who are there, go and take care of them. He takes care of them right over there. A third time he says, go take care of them right there. Jibreel alayhi salam, and this is reported in numerous books of hadith, Jibreel descends and he says to Rasulullah, he comments, he says that this, what he is doing right now, this is what you call sacrifice. This is what you call helping the Prophet of Allah. And Imam Ali, the Prophet says at that point, he says that Ali minni wa ana min Ali. We're both from each other. And Jibreel says that I am from you as well too. And that's when the famous saying is heard in the skies, La sayfa illa dhul fiqar, la fata illa Ali. Fata meaning somebody who is eternally young. I want to talk more about this idea of youthfulness, and sometimes it's translated as chivalry. And inshallah it's very interesting. Well, if we get a chance, we can see how Imam Ali was the inspiration for even what in today's world we know as knighthood and chivalry. If you look at, you trace back the history of it, there's a connection between that and Imam Ali as well too. But inshallah we can leave that for another time. What I want to say tonight though, is that Imam Ali he was the same age as these people, but in every way, he was able to maintain these good characteristics of what does it mean to be somebody who's actually a fatah, somebody who in every circumstance does what he needs to. And this is an example for us. They say that Imam Ali in times when other people would fail, he would demonstrate what others ought to have shown. When it was the battle of Siffin, the army of Muawiyah, they had control over the river. And the army of Imam Ali were in the desert, it was hot, they had ran out of water, they go and ask them for water. Muawiyah and the soldiers said that we're never going to give you water. You can die out of thirst, but you won't have access to this. Imam Ali is forced to attack them, and eventually they get access to the water. And some of the soldiers say that, okay, let's do the same thing. Right? Let's block the water from them. And he says that I can never do that type of thing. That's not the way I do things. We don't treat people like that. And he orders that a certain portion of the river, they should have free access to this. He doesn't respond in turn. In the battle of Khandaq, when he's fighting Amr ibn Wad, the famous warrior, they say that after the battle takes place, there's a bunch of, it's so intense that the people who are onlooking, they can only see dust in the air. Right? They don't even know who's actually winning the battle. And so finally they hear the cry of takbir, Allahu Akbar, and they realize that Imam Ali is victorious. There was somebody in the enemy army, it was the sister of Amr ibn Wad who goes and she's upset after, her brother has been killed. So soon afterwards she runs to the body of her brother. But when she gets there, she notices something. She sees that unlike what was the tradition at that time, usually when people would win the battle, right, they would be very keen on getting the spoils of the war. Right? They would go and, let's say that person had money and their purse, their wallet, the good clothes. They would take this, the armor, and be like, okay, this is my spoils of war. Right? It was one of the ways of getting rich. because they didn't have bank accounts, so they would have everything with them. So she noticed that this person's body hadn't been looted. It's very strange because usually that was the custom. So then she asked, she says, but who was it that was the killer of my brother? And they tell her that it was Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Now, this is a famous incident in history that when she hears this, on the spot she composes some poetry. What does she say? She says, لو كان قاتل عمر غير قاتله لكنت أبكي عليه آخر الأبد. If the killer of Amr had been somebody other than the one who killed him, I would have been crying for him until I would have died. لكن قاتله من لا يعاب به من كان يدعى قديما بيضة البلد. Meaning that, but the one who killed him is the one that nobody can be disgraced by being killed by him. He is the one who's always considered extraordinary in the land. But when she realized that this was the type of person who had killed her brother, that was something that she says that, okay, I'm okay with that. I can deal with that. I'm honored by the fact that it was this person who killed my brother. This is the type of person who we're mourning tonight. Somebody who embodies the spirit of eternal youthfulness. And here we're sitting in this gathering, alhamdulillah, we're blessed, and I'm moving towards the conclusion of my speech. I know it's getting late, it's a weekday. There are a lot of young people here, alhamdulillah. Brothers and sisters, some of the qualities that we have as young people, that spirit of freedom, that spirit of not being tied to certain habits which are destructive, that spirit of being able to think about things and be able to change and adapt quickly, to be able to see the truth and move towards it. These are things which we have to embrace and not give up. We shouldn't think that, okay, well, it's only the old people who can achieve a high success, and only the old people who can be close to God. Actually, it's the people who are young and have that youthful spirit. We have people here who are also past their young age, but they have that youthful spirit. And inshallah, they can always maintain that youthful spirit. What type of youthful spirit? Not one of rebellion and one of, let's say, I'm going to be an eternal partier. No. One of this understanding that I'm not somebody who is attached to my habits. I'm not somebody who is here forever. I'm somebody who can find my own path. I don't need to be stuck to certain traditions which are destructive. And these are things that we can see when we compare and contrast the example of Talha Zubayr and Imam Ali alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tonight is a night of mourning, and inshallah I would like to say a few words of masa'ib. We can try to, inshallah, reflect on the situation in the home of Ali alayhi salam tonight. If you're somebody who has love for Hazrat Zainab salamullahi alayha and Kulthum, then try to imagine the situation of Zainab alayhi salam on this evening. If you have love for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, then try to imagine the situation as they see their father and what is happening to him on this evening. Sallallahu alayka ya Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. It was on the previous night that the cry of Ali alayhi salam fills the masjid. فزت ورب الكعبة. I have succeeded by the Lord of the Kaaba. What is the definition of success in the eyes of Imam Ali alayhi salam? How does it compare to my and your definition? For Ali alayhi salam, success is not found in worldly status, in bank accounts, in positions and power. Success is found in being able to live and die in a state that we are the servants of Allah. That's why we see that when Imam Ali alayhi salam is struck in the house of Allah in the state of worshipping Allah, he cries out, Bismillah, Bismillahi wa billahi wa ala millati Rasulullah. Sadaqa Allah wa sadaqa Rasulullah. I begin in the name of Allah. I am following the path of Rasulullah. Indeed, Allah and the Messenger of Allah have been truthful. I am not at all sad. I am happy that I am going to meet my Lord in this state. I am rejoicing that I am becoming a shaheed, a martyr in the way of Allah. This is the state of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But what about those around him? They say that there was a wind, a strong wind that was blowing. The cry was heard from the sky. The people who were awake were alerted that something had gone wrong. They hear the cry of Jibreel alayhi salam fill the sky. قتل ابن عم المصطفى قتل علي المرتضى. The cousin of Prophet Muhammad has been killed. Ali al-Murtada has been killed. The people flock to the masjid. They see that Imam Ali alayhi salam's beard has been overcome with his own blood. He is taking the earth from the ground. He is putting it on his wound. He is trying to stop the blood from bleeding. He tells them that it is Ibn Muljam who has done this act. They go and find Ibn Muljam. They bring Ibn Muljam to Imam Ali alayhi salam. Perhaps at this moment Imam Ali alayhi salam is remembering that incident which took place many years earlier. Ibn Muljam had come to him. He asked him, he says to Imam Ali, I don't have any horse to ride. Will you give me a horse of yours to ride? Imam Ali alayhi salam asks him, who are you? Tell me your name. He tells him that I am Ibn Muljam al-Muradi. Once again Imam Ali alayhi salam asks him, tell me what is your name? He says, I am Ibn Muljam al-Muradi. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he orders his servant, he tells him, give him my finest horse, let him ride it. When Ibn Muljam takes the horse, he rides away. As he is retreating, Imam Ali alayhi salam calls out, أريد حياتك وتريد قتلي. I wish for you to live and you wish for me to be killed. At that time, Ibn Muljam might not have understood what Imam Ali alayhi salam was referring to, but Imam Ali alayhi salam knew who his killer was. There was some around him who asked him, Ya Ali, if he's going to be the one who kills you, why don't you just order for him to be killed right now? Imam Ali alayhi salam says that would not be in line with justice. Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he sees that Ibn Muljam has been brought to him, he asks him a question. He says, Ya Hada, oh so-and-so, you have done a very great deed by striking me in this way. Tell me something. أَكُنْتُ بِئْسَ الْإِمَامِ. Was I a bad imam for you? Was I not good to you? Was I not kind to you? Ibn Muljam begins to cry when he hears the Imam's question of him. Imam Ali alayhi salam looks to Imam al-Hasan. He tells him that don't you see Ibn Muljam, his eyes are circling. Out of fear, his heart is pounding, he is so scared. Oh Hassan, treat him gently, treat him kindly, give him something, do ihsan to him, treat him well. The people might have been surprised at the start that Imam Ali alayhi salam was treating his killer in this way. But this is the Imam who is the compassionate Imam. This is the Imam who would feed orphans with his own hand. This is the Imam who is facing his own killer. He's not willing to cross the line and do something unjust. He told Imam Hassan alayhi salam, treat your prisoner well. When you bring me something to eat or drink, bring him something. Don't, on account of me, don't go and kill other people. Do not let my death be an excuse to be unjust. When they bring some milk to Imam Ali alayhi salam, he drinks a little bit of it and he asks them, is the virgin being fed? Take this milk to him and cause him to let him drink from this milk that you have given to me. We see the kindness of Imam Ali alayhi salam with his own prisoner. But what did they do to the son of Imam Ali alayhi salam in Karbala? They say when the situation became severe, Imam Hussein alayhi salam began to repeat again and again, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The thirst had become too much for him to bear. He goes to the enemy, he says, can you give me some water? How do they respond? They say that you see this water, it is cool, it is clear like the bellies of snakes, but you will not get a drop of it, oh Hussein. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. فاطمة حسين.
Oh, you orphans, why are you here? What has happened that you shed tears? Has your father not come tonight? He is not well, do not come near. We will all be orphans if he leaves us. Without him, who else can come relieve us? To be far away from him, it grieves us. We will all be orphans if he leaves us. Without him, who else can come relieve us? To be far away from him, it grieves us. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla. All together, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla. Let me hear you. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla. Oh, you orphans, why are you here?
what has happened that you shed tears? Has your Father not come tonight? He is not well, do not come near. We will all be orphans if he leaves, but without him, who else can come relieve us? To be far away from him, it grieves us. We will all be orphans if he leaves us. Without him, who else can come relieve us? To be far away from him, it grieves us. Ya Ali, all together. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla, Ya Ali. MashaAllah, Ya Ali Mawla. Let your voices out. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali Mawla. MashaAllah, one more time. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ali Mawla. In this month the prophet he said, a warrior he was truly brave, but in the darkness how lonely. Who will come place him in his grave? He was struck by the sword, but I'm thankful his daughters were not watching. I'm thankful there were no spears, so I'm thankful, Ya Hussein. He was struck by the sword, but I'm thankful his daughters were not watching. I'm thankful there were no spears, so I'm thankful, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein Mawla, 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 Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein Mawla, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein Mawla, Ya Hussein. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وجعلنا من أعوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد.